Good Erev Shabbos, everybody. This week's Parshas Vayeishev. And here we have the incident in which Yosef, the great righteous Yosef, is sold as a slave down to Egypt, purchased by Potiphar. And it says that the wife of Potiphar came to Yosef, propositioning him with attempts to seduce him. And Yosef absolutely refused, as it says in the Pasuk, Vayemo'em. He refused, and he said to his master's wife, he said, my master knows of nothing that transpires here in the house, for he has entrusted his entire estate unto me. There is no one greater than I am in his entire estate. There is no one here quite like me. The only thing he has denied me is you, for you are his wife. How could I possibly contemplate doing what you are suggesting? This would be such a cruel and ingrateful, evil thing, and it would be a great sin unto God. And it says that she spoke to him every single day. And one day she found herself alone with Yosef, and she grabbed him by his cloak and saying to him that he should be with her. And it says that he abandoned his cloak in her hands. Vayonos, he fled. Vayetze achutz, and he went outside. In the Medrash, it states that we find by the Sea of Reeds, when Klal Yisrael was being pursued by the Egyptians, and it says, Hayom Ra'ah Vayonos. We say this in the book of Psalms. The sea, the waters saw, and they retreated. They fled. They fled before Klal Yisrael, and they divided. What did the waters of the sea, what did they see that they should divide? It says they saw the casket containing the remains of Yosef. When they sensed the presence of Yosef, the waters retreated. What's the meaning of this? So they saw Moshe Rabbeinu, they saw Aaron HaKohen, they saw Miriam, the prophetess, and yet the waters wouldn't retreat in their merit. What was it about Yosef that this should serve as a means to cause the waters to retreat and divide? Please excuse me, my voice, my throat is a little bit sore, so I apologize. Our sages say that the wife of Potiphar was like a bear. She came after Yosef like a bear. What does it mean, like a bear? Well, of all the animals, of all the fowl, why do our sages say that she came like a bear? The Sifsei Chachamim say that a bear, yes, it hibernates, but the rest of the year it has no rest. And she had no rest until she could conquer Yosef. But this is still something which it leaves the question is still not satisfactory. We haven't satisfied the answer. Our sages tell us that every trait that Hashem has created, even traits that we find that we don't approve of them, nevertheless, they have a place in the service of God. For example, anger. It's not good to be angry. A person who is angry, they lose themselves. Who knows what they'll say, what they'll do. But there's a place for anger. Sometimes when we are trying to educate and teach our children right and wrong, we have to demonstrate anger, not to become angry, not to lose ourselves, but to show a face of anger. So our children will recognize how the severity of the issue that they're dealing with. That's why Hashem created anger. They asked a question where the Gemara tells us that a Baal Gaiva, an arrogant, conceited individual, Hashem says, I can't live with such a person. This is a trait that Hashem detests. Person thinks, look how wonderful, how great I am. So the question is, why would Hashem create such a trait? If it's something which Hashem abhors, Why would he create such a trait? Everything that Hashem creates has a moment in which it can be used in the service of Hashem. The wife of Potiphar is compared to a bear, because a bear is unlike other animals, lions and wolves. They will catch their prey and they will rip it apart and they will destroy it. But a bear doesn't do that. On the contrary, a bear will embrace and hug its victim, squeezing it so tightly until it can literally crush the victim. It is a relentless, it's not just an attack in which it digs its nails, its claws, its paws into you, but it is a trap in which the force is relentless, getting stronger and stronger. This I'd like to suggest is the meaning of what our sages say, that the wife of Potiphar was like a bear, relentless. She didn't come to attack Yosef, but day in and day out. As the verse says, Vayehi kedaber el Yosef yoim yoim. She spoke to Yosef every single day of 12 months that Yosef was in the service of Potiphar. She would come to him and every day she would put on new clothing with new shoes, with new perfumes to grab the attention of Yosef. And she would say, and Yosef, when he would notice she'd be there, he would look down and she would put metal and iron under his face that he couldn't bend his head down, and he would close his eyes. And she would threaten him and she would say, I am going to break you, I'm going to crush you and make you bend over. And he said, God is zokef kafufim, God straightens out those who are bent over. She said, I will blind you. And he said, God is paikeach hivrim. God gives vision to the blind. Everything that she threatened Yosef remained steadfast in the purity of his faith. And day in and day out, relentlessly growing more and more powerful in her pursuit of Yosef. That's why she's referred to as the bear. How did Yosef respond? From Yosef, we learn how we should respond when we're faced with a temptation, whether it's a temptation of a Potiphar's wife, or maybe just a temptation to say things we shouldn't, go places we shouldn't, do things we shouldn't, whatever it might be. First and foremost, before we start thinking, before we start rationalizing and weighing the pros and the cons, we should ask ourselves one question. Does this meet with the approval of God? And if not, then vayemo'ein. Then we must follow in the footsteps of Yosef and refuse. I don't want to discuss it. I don't want to hear what you have to say. This is wrong. I won't do it. As a matter of fact, the notes that the Balkara uses on the word vayemo'ein is called the shalshelis. That means that his voice goes up and down 3 different times. What's the meaning of this? That Yosef refused adamantly 3 times. No, absolutely not. There is nothing to discuss. Only at that point, when it is so absolutely crystal clear that this is something from which is toxic to the Jewish soul, then Yosef can begin to explain that she should understand. And how does Yosef explain to her? Yosef says, is there anyone quite like me here? Has anybody been entrusted with the responsibility and have the confidence of your husband, my master? There's no one greater than I am. Listen to the arrogance. Listen to the statement that seems so conceited. No one's greater than I am. But here it was permissible. This is why Hashem created this trait, that it should be used in our defense when we have to fight off the onslaught of the evil inclination. The evil inclination, the Slonim Rebbe says, comes to us and says, go ahead, try it, do it. You're gonna enjoy this. Yeah, maybe it's not so right. Maybe it's not the best thing. So you're not a tzaddik. Big deal. You know you're not a tzaddik. You know you're not a tzaddik. Yes, listen, you've done this, you've done that. We got plenty of skeletons, whatever. This won't make a difference. Trust me, it won't make a difference. And it's an opportunity to experience something you'll really enjoy. How do we respond when the Yetzer Hara starts pushing those buttons? We must respond like Yosef. Do you know who I am? Forget about my past. Do you know who I am? You want me to engage in this activity? I am a direct descendant of Abraham and Sarah, of Yitzchak and Rivka, of Yaakov, Rachel, Leah. I am a descendant. I come from aristocracy. And if I've converted to Judaism, I have chosen to become part of this aristocracy of the holy people. My soul stood at Sinai. My soul said, Nasa v'nishma, God, I accept your Torah. That's who I am. Who do you think you're talking to? The element of conceit and arrogance. Here it's appropriate. Yosef demonstrated for Klal Yisrael how to deal with perhaps the greatest temptation and seduction any human being would ever be confronted with. He shows us that it can be done, even though it's not natural. It's not natural. A normal, ordinary human being, there is no possibility that one can overcome the seductions of the wife of Potiphar. But Yosef said, the people of faith who know what's right and what's wrong in their hearts and their souls, those who know who they truly are, we can defy the limitations of our nature. We can transcend the laws of nature. And that's the meaning of the Medrash. Moshe Rabbeinu, no one like him, the greatest prophet who ever lived, Aaron HaKohen, the prototype Kohen Gadol living to perform chesed and shalom. Miriam and Aviyah, the thirst of millions of people were quenched as a result of the merit of this great prophetess and tzaddikus. But it was the remains of Yosef HaTzadik that the body of water saw. He who demonstrated that one can defy the laws of nature in the service of God, and therefore the waters defied the laws of nature. The waters should retreat. The waters should stand erect and divide. Scientifically, it's impossible. And yet it did. Yosef, he can defy the laws of nature, transcending them in the service of Hashem. So can the sea of reeds. This is not just to share with us an interesting story about Yosef and how great he was. It is the prescription and the blueprint for our lives. In this day and age in which we are bombarded with seductive forces that come into our home, whether it's through the internet, it's through television, it's through media, through whatever it is in the world that we live in, it is literally impossible to escape. But the Jew has to know first and foremost, Vayem mo'eh, I refuse, I will not compromise. I am a descendant of the patriarchs and matriarchs. I received God's Torah. I witnessed the plagues and the exodus of Egypt. It is in my merit I was given the temple, the holy sacred temple. I have the privilege to stand in prayer and speak directly unto my Creator. That's who I am. And I will not degrade nor belittle myself by whatever society presents. For this is what Yosef HaTzadik has demonstrated and presented to each and every one of us. Have a wonderful Shabbos. Stay healthy, stay safe, and stay Jewish.